Hey you, come, gather around the campfire, and welcome to the party. This is Party Chat, a JRPG podcast where we talk about everything that we love in the world of JRPGs and other Eastern titles. I am one of your hosts, Cameron Hawkins, and with me, as always, is my party partner, Kevin Kenson. Kevin, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm trying to get a lot of stuff done before I go die at Anime Expo. So just balancing out what I can. How about you? How you?
I'm doing all right, all things considered. I wish I was going to Anime Expo, but money. And also just going to a couple of weddings. I have a wedding to go to this month. I have a wedding to go to in September, and there's PAX West in August. So it's just like,
There's plenty of travel already coming up for you. Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
admittedly, I'm only going because I was able to get a media invite, and I live not far from LA, so
Yeah.
I'm paying for parking. Is really all I'm paying for to attend, which is still honestly a little more than I'm happy with because of how expensive it is to park in LA. But it's a lot better than con tickets. So,
Nope, definitely. The parking, I would definitely take the parking over the price of like the badge. Uh, but you know, Kevin, my vision for this podcast was I wanted this to be a place where, like, people of all experience with the genre could come in, and if they want to learn more, if they're new, if they're well versed, they're smarter than us.
okay,
When it comes to the genre.
before you finish this thought, I want to clarify something to everyone listening right now. I am never prepped on what random subject Cam wants to talk about when we first start. We'll talk about the topic of the show, we'll talk about news we're going to go over, and then I'm just here in suspense when we start rolling and he starts saying stuff like this where I'm like, I don't know where we're about to go. I legitimately don't know what he's about to say.
And that's what makes it so great. It's like it's just a bit that started happening, and I'm like, I'm just gonna make this a thing where I'm gonna bring a random topic to Kevin and just see how he responds.
Where are we going? Take me on this journey.
Yeah, and so I never want to. We don't gatekeep here. We don't gatekeep here. That being said, there are definitely people that like aren't JRPG people, and then they play like really notably good JRPGs. And then like they talk about their experience with these games as they go along, and I'm like, I don't know, man. I just don't think you like JRPGs, and that's okay. But like let's just like not lie. Let's not just say let's just say crazy shit. Because like there's this one guy on TikTok. I don't know his name, and I wouldn't say his name because I'm not trying to spread hate or anything like that. It's more just like me turning into the Joker.
Okay.
Where he decided. And I'm sure people are going to find out who listen to it once I explain the premise. But when IGN released their top 25 JRPGs of all time, he decided that he was going to, over time, no specific time limit, he's going to play through all of them.
Okay.
And he's not a JRPG guy.
Sure.
And so he's currently playing through Persona 5 Royal. And for those that don't know, if this is the first episode you're listening to of this podcast for some reason, we think all the Persona games are masterpieces, but we also think that Persona 5 Royal is the worst of the three. And he's like, he was just saying like some of the most out of pocket shit, dude. That was like, we were talking about like, oh, like the music is fine. Like, okay. You're crazy. And then
I wasn't prepared for how left field of a bad take that is. Like, because like there's a lot where I'd be like, okay, sure, like the gameplay's not for you, or you think the calendar system is bad, like whatever. There's all kinds of directions you kind of got. Yeah, no. Starting with the music is bad. What the?
No, not that it's bad. That it's like fine. Like he's like it's not like I forgot exactly what games he tried to compare it to, but if he did, but like he's like, oh, the music is fine. And it's just like dog. Like he's like my favorite song so far is like Beneath the Mask, and I'm like, that's your favorite song? Like Beneath the Mask is good, but like if that's your favorite song of everything that Persona 5 has to offer, up to like the third palace. He's on the third palace last time I saw. Which that has the best palace theme, like in my opinion. I don't know if you agree with that, but like the bank.
The bank's up there. That's a good one. Yeah.
Dude, so good. So good. And so that was wild. And he likes the darts mini game, which is good, because that's a good mini game.
Yeah.
He's like he's starting to warm up on it, but he's just like he's at the point now where he's like, I'm 50 hours in, and here's a list of all games I could have beaten at this point. It's just like, why does that matter?
Yeah,
like,
that's not the takeaway. That should never be the takeaway.
Yeah, exactly. And then he's talking about like you just talked about so many things. Even like when he did like he's doing a video every 10 hours. That's like, and I want to be clear, all of these are coming up on my feed against my will. Like I'm not like subscribed, I didn't follow this guy or anything.
Yeah. Well, no, it's the classic TikTok algorithm of you watched one for like 2 seconds and that's just locked you in. And that's it knows like, it knows you're gonna hate watch it, or train wreck can't avert your eyes. And I mean, yeah, you're not looking for it, but you're watching it.
And to be clear, this like for my personal opinion, I've seen other videos from this guy before, and I think a lot of his takes are bad, just in general.
Yeah, just something you don't agree with. Yeah.
So this is the first thing that he said, like, of a JRPG. I'm like, okay, I need to see what this guy has to say about one of the best Persona or like JRPGs of the modern age. Like, please talk to me about it. And then and on the like he's doing 10 hours per video.
Sure.
And I'm pretty sure it was like just under the first 10 hours video. I was just like, I don't know, dog. Like, as someone who plays a lot of JRPGs, it's you just don't like JRPGs. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. He didn't respond to it, but it's just like the things that he says, I just feel like are so like random and obscure to like what the whole experience of Persona is.
Sure.
Like, you're talking about the mini games, but you're not talking about like the main story really at all. And he's also one of those guys that it's very, very, very clear that like he doesn't like this was the craziest thing that he said. This was the craziest thing that he said. He says he thinks it's like cringe when in like where like that all of the voice acting is like super animated. Like it's like what's the word I'm looking for? Over exaggerated.
Okay.
Because like it's anime, right? So like with the voice versus like a Western game, where it's like it's a lot more like realism. And then like in Persona, it's like over the top voice acting.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, what? Like it's just such a silly thing to have a problem with.
Sure.
Like that was the thing that really made me be like, dog, if that is a problem for you, just don't play JRPGs, because the vast majority of them are going to be like that. That have voice acting.
Well, I mean, that it kind of feels like that's kind of the point of this, right? Is it someone who's unfamiliar with the overall genre or style is forcefully exposing themselves to it, and like probably isn't a thing for them anyways, but they're going to like talk their shit, their truth, which even if it's one that we are completely coming from another like side from it, or just like, what the hell are you talking about right now?
Like, do you not like anime? Like, do you not like general anime? Because if he doesn't, then like, okay, then I guess you're consistent.
Yeah.
Right?
No, and that's kind of where it ends up being, where it's just sort of like, there is a base premise and worldview here where it's just like, it's doomed that you're just not gonna like what this guy has to say. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, there's no...
Yeah, no, it's more like I'm trying to figure him out. Like, I'm trying to give him like the benefit of the doubt and just be like, all right, let me see if I can figure out what you really have that's an issue with this game and maybe this genre as a whole. And like, but again, like if he's just like, yo, dog, I just don't think JRPGs are for me, that's fine. Like, that's totally fine. But let's not just say random shit. No.
I mean, like, this just sounds like one of those things at the end of the day where, man, it's content.
Yeah.
He's figuring out a thing that he's doing, and I mean, it sounds like it's getting people's attention. If you're sitting watching it, going, "God damn it, God damn it, God damn it," like
100, dude,
it's
I'm like,
it,
dog,
yeah,
no.
it's that's content, baby. That's what it's like for people making stuff. Sometimes I love it,
Yeah.
I hate it.
Because again, I want this podcast to be welcoming to people that aren't familiar with
Sure.
the genre or not super into the genre. Some of our patrons are not JRPG
Yeah.
guys,
Well,
but they enjoy and so like I just like I
it
but I
sounds
also it's
it's
also just like upsetting where it's just like, oh, there's someone new and it's just like, oh yeah, this guy just doesn't like JRPGs, it seems like. That sucks.
yeah. Well, and there's that idea too of like why someone is approaching and trying it, right? Like, is it
Yeah.
not even necessarily bad faith of like you're intentionally just trying to have bad takes to stir the pot or whatever, but it's like this is someone who is trying something out and sharing their thoughts on it, but perhaps are not trying it out for the reasons of, oh, I legitimately think this is interesting or appeals to me in some way. I'm just going to give this a shot because this is what people say is good, and I'm going to give my take on it. Which again, like, I don't even know who you're talking about right now. I have no idea what their other content's like or what their history is. I can't help but read it as either bad faith for the sake of engagement, or they just come from a different background than us, and they're going all in on the like, I'm gonna come into this space, try this stuff, and talk about it my way. Which,
And I want to
yeah,
be clear. I don't think he's trying to be bad faith.
sure,
I think he's genuinely like, he's like, hey, like JRPGs aren't like aren't really my thing. Like I've never really got into them. Like, but I want to uh try more of them. And then when the JRPG list, the IGN came out, he was like, here's the perfect opportunity to try this stuff out.
yeah.
But yeah, there's just like some random stuff that like just felt like, why does this matter? Like, why does it matter that you're 50 hours in and you could have finished all these other games? Like, it's about it's quality over quantity here, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
of all the things you brought up, that's the one that does bother me the most, because I hate that argument in both directions. Like, I hate when people are like, "Oh, I want a game that respects my investment, and if I'm going to spend this much on it, it has to get me at least 60 hours, minimum 70 hours, got to hit triple digits, whatever." I hate that, and I also hate the like, "Oh, I could have played 8 other games instead of wasting time on this one this long." And it's like, that's just engage with the thing, with the package it's trying to bring to you. Like,
Yeah.
don't. Like, some things are designed to be short, some things are designed to be long-term investments. And like, you can just generally not like long games or short games, but like, don't make that some kind of weird like objective fact that longer is better or shorter is better. Like, it's just a bizarre thing to me.
Yeah, and I and we'll move on after this because I know we're getting near that 10 minute.
We're well over it.
Oh, okay. I know I'm someone personally that hates when someone tells me like, when I say like, oh, I don't think this game's really for me, and they're like, oh, wait till you get to like hour 10 or 15, and I'm like, no, fuck that. Like, I'm like, absolutely not, dude. Um, and then, but on top of that, when it comes to like a series like Persona, if something like, especially for someone that's like not familiar with Persona, I have to make that same claim for them. I have to be like, hey, like, I don't like being told this myself, but in this circumstance, you need to play a substantial amount of a Persona game to understand like everything that that game is offering to you.
The onboarding
Um,
time is very long.
yeah, exactly. And so I hate when people do that to me, but there are some circumstances like Persona where I have to be like, yo, like, this game's going to take a while to really get its gears turning, and then really the game doesn't fully open up until like halfway through the game, which is one of my major issues with Persona in general. Um and so yeah, I just like, I'm gonna keep watching and seeing my thoughts, because he's 50 hours in and he's only at the bank. And normally I would say like, what have you been doing those 50 hours to only be at the bank? But it's his first Persona. And I feel like when people play their first Personas, it takes them way longer than a normal playthrough. Like, most people would in a normal playthrough. Because, like, I beat P5 in, like, 75, 80 hours. And I beat Royal in, like, 100. And then but I know people that said, like, oh, it took me, like, 120 hours. Like, 40 more hours to beat Vanilla 5. And I'm like, how?
Yeah.
Like, how are you?
No, I do find myself in that scenario as well very often, where people will tell me how long it took them to beat a certain game, and I'll be like, I did that. And this isn't like me trying to speedrun. It's just how I play stuff. And I will be bewildered as well sometimes, where it's just like, oh, I don't like not in a like, oh, how are you like bad or something, just more of like, I'm just like, there's that much stuff to do. Like, what do you?
Yeah, like you leaving the clock running or something. Like,
yeah, it fluxes me when I hear it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because I am I'm a pretty hard stickler about, like, if I need to stop playing, I will like turn off. I will turn off the game. I don't want my clock running.
Right.
So, anyway. How's everybody doing? Yeah, we're gonna go into some housekeeping. First things first, if you've been enjoying the show, please go to your podcast service of choice, give us 5 stars there, as well as go to our YouTube, youtube.com/@partychatjrpgpod, and hit the subscribe button over there. Both of those things go a long way for us. If you want to send a little money our way, you can support us on Patreon, where we have paid tiers for rewards, like getting the podcast a day early, exclusive access to our Discord, a monthly Q&A, which we just recorded. I had a brain fart there, as well as Campfire Catalog, our book club podcast, which we are currently doing on Legend of Dragoon. I have finally gotten back to Legend of Dragoon, Kevin, after a lot of time of not being able to really play video games at home. So, if you want to know my thoughts and Kevin's thoughts and some special guest thoughts on Legend of Dragoon when we're all wrapped up on it, you can get that on our Patreon. Lastly, go to youtube.com/Kevin Kenson and hit the subscribe button over there as we get him to 1 million subscribers before the end of 2023 or 2025. Jesus Christ.
Just that's how weird years have been since 2020. You might as well be 23 still. I don't know.
Also, I do want it on record. Like, I know that I slip up on this podcast. We recorded like a 2.5 hour podcast earlier today. We recorded our Q&A. So I'm already a little like tongue tired, if that makes sense.
You also did start the day a little lower energy too. So I think it's just It's just one of those days. It's one of those days. We got to record. We got to do our thing, and we're gonna have some good talks. But also, my brain is not entirely here.
Yes, I stayed up till way late because I couldn't sleep, and I watched season 3 of Squid Game. I watched all of it in like a single sitting. I did not think I was going to do that, but that's what I did.
That'll happen sometimes.
Yep. So the main news story for this week is there was a Bandai Namco showcase that happened like right before we started recording this podcast, and they shared a bunch of stuff that we're gonna talk about. First things first, My Hero Academia: Justice for All has been announced. This is the new My Hero Academia fighting game. The previous one was called One Justice. It's another fighting game. It's My Hero's Naruto Shippuden, and the Demon Slayer Chronicles game. Like, you're getting that. That is what this game is. Did you have any thoughts on this? You haven't watched My Hero Academia, right?
I watched up till season 4, season 5. I burnt out on it over time. Shonen's tough for me. Like, I get into it sometimes and I'll be like in the right mind space for it, but generally speaking, for me to stick with a show over multiple seasons, I just need a little more juice than I tend to get from shonen stuff. No hate on anyone that enjoys it. It just isn't really my thing in the long run. I do much better with like shorter run series. Give me like 2 dense packed seasons and I'm happy.
Yeah, I've been watching it all. I think that the first two. The first two seasons are really, really good.
Yeah.
And then like from 3 to like 6, your results may vary, and in various it very fluctuates. It
Sure.
fluctuates depending on what part of the show it is.
Which again, I stopped like somewhere around season 4, so like that tracks. Maybe I hit
4
season
was
5.
definitely where there was like a low point. So, but yeah, so this is the follow-up to One Justice 2. One Justice came out in 2018. One Justice 2 came out in 2020. And this is the new one. And it's actually called All's Justice, not Justice for All. My bad on that one. And it's gonna focus on this final war arc that is currently happening in the anime. It is scheduled to come out. We don't know yet. No release date yet, but it's coming out on PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. No mention of Switch 2 or Switch.
Interesting.
Yep. Next up, we got Code Vein 2. We actually got a pretty decent package on Code Vein 2. There's some information that we got from it. I have not played Code Vein. Kevin, you have, right?
Yes,
A little
but
bit?
like it was honestly minimal enough. I'm not sure I have any like great insight.
Okay.
It was one of those like it was on Game Pass. I installed it, and I think I got like past the character creator, and then I got distracted with something else I needed to play. Like I just
Okay.
never really gave it a real push.
Okay. Yeah, so they confirm, for those that do know Code Vein, they confirm that Drain Attacks, the partner system, and Blood Code are all returning mechanics. The premise of this game is that there's a phenomenon called Surgence, where the Luna Rapicus is like deforming revenants into horror creatures. And the protagonist is a revenant hunter who dies during a mission but is revived by a revenant named Lou, who shares a part of her heart with the main character. Very Xenoblade Chronicle 2 coded. And then Lou is able to travel through time, and her and the MC go 100 years in the past to stop the destruction of the world. It is set to come out sometime in 2026 for PS5, Xbox, and PC. Any thoughts on that? Any comments?
No.
Nope. Alrighty. Patapon 1+2 replay got a little segment. It's coming out July 11th. Release date on PS5, Switch, and Steam. Toa and the Guardian of the Sacred Tree got a segment where this is basically Bandai Namco making their own Hades. This is very, very Hades coded. The roguelike. One thing that's interesting is that you pick 2 characters to play as, and there's 8 characters total. So it looks cool. I like the art style. It is very much presented in every which way possible as a Hades clone.
Right.
It looks
yeah,
quality.
going on runs. Yeah, going on runs, picking certain power ups for that particular run. I will say I was talking about this a little bit during our Q&A about like Hades is one of the games I do enjoy a lot, and it's like one of the roguelites I can go back to and spend a lot of time in. And that isn't purely because of the gameplay. I think some of the narrative aspects and characters are part of what drives that for that game for me. But as someone who is an absolute sucker for multiple playable characters and picking more than one at a time, I am definitely more curious about this game than I was initially.
Yeah, I think the 2-player or 2 characters at once thing is the most interesting prospect about this game. I'm very curious as to how that all plays out. But we'll have to wait and see later this year, as it is releasing on September 19th for PS5, Xbox Series, Switch, and Steam. No Switch 2 announced as of right now. Pac-Man is coming to everybody's golf hotshots. It's Pac-Man is like a character you can unlock by playing through the game naturally, but if you pre-order the game, you will be able to unlock him early. And it's coming out on September 5th for PS5, Switch, and Steam. Kevin, are you a Super Robot Wars guy?
I'm not.
Okay.
Well, it's one of those franchises where I feel like if I had gotten the exposure at the right time, I would probably be all about it. But I just
Mhm.
like missed it, and so like
Mm.
it's one of those things where it's a franchise where I know it exists and there's a whole lot of games in it that I should probably like try at some point. But I've just missed that train so far.
Makes sense. Uh, yeah, I have not. I don't think I heard of it for the first time until like maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I was
Mhm.
like, "What is this series?" But apparently, like those that know that shit are eat that shit up.
Yeah,
So
there's also a lot of them that have never come out here. Like there's
yes,
the number that we've gotten in the West pales compared to the actual like full list of games of that franchise.
yeah, it seems like that every time one gets localized, like Western fans are like surprised.
Like, oh, we're actually getting it. Cool.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But yeah, so Super Robot Wars Y got like a decent package during this showcase as well. Um, so all I'll say is that if you are a Super Robot Wars fan, you should check that out. We are not knowledgeable about it, so we're not really going to talk about it. But it looks cool, looks interesting. Um, and it's releasing on August 28th for PS5, Switch, and Steam. No mention of a Switch 2 version. Kevin, I'm really interested on your thoughts on this next one, The Blood of Dawnwalker. So this was announced at SGF, I believe, and it's this fantasy RPG where you are a daywalker. So you're like a half human, half vampire. And during the day, it's kind of like your run of the mill RPG where you have like sword and magic. But when it's nighttime, you are a vampire and you like uh using your claw, you're using like claws to attack people. You need to feed on people to get blood, and like you have to do the things that the vampires do. And just from like what we saw, it looks really interesting. Like I think the main thing I want to know is more RPG elements, and especially in the sense of like dialogue choices. Uh, do those choices affect the story? Like those are the things that I'm very curious about. But when it comes to the gameplay, it looks pretty interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, this one is interesting because like obviously this podcast being what it is, we focus more on Japanese RPGs, whereas this is absolutely something that comes more from a Western RPG background. Bandai Namco
Yeah.
is publishing it, but this is a game from a new studio called Rebel Wolves. I'm not 100% sure where they're based, but stylistically, this definitely follows in the line of a more Western RPG tradition. Um, it gives me some vague vibes of things like what was that game a few years back? I say few, it was probably like 2017 at this point. Vampire with a Y.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Hmm.
there's this whole like subgenre of Western RPGs where it's you're a vampire and you deal with the choices. Like I think a lot of people really got into Vampire the Masquerade years ago and then just try to like do that in a video game format, including even the Vampire the Masquerade games. Uh, and yeah, I imagine while we haven't seen a ton of it yet, I would think based on the style this looks like it's going along with that there would be dialogue and plot branching within that kind of style. That's pretty cool. I mean, one of the things we've talked about a few times in the past with like Western versus JRPG is usually, not always, but usually Western RPGs place a little heavier emphasis on like you are your character, you make choices, you have to decide how certain things turn out, and that will impact how certain characters perceive you or the way the story plays out. Whereas a lot of Japanese RPGs are no, this is the story, you're going to experience it as it is. There are exceptions in both camps for this thing, but that is a more common design choice you'll see come up. And so I feel like based on what we've seen so far, I would think that'd be part of this as well. I get a little bit of that sort of like this is your story. This is a sandboxy approach to playing as someone who is a daywalker is the term they use for this one. Yeah, I feel like I need to learn more about this one. We've seen bits and pieces of it here and there, but I really want to see like a good extended deep dive in it.
Yeah. It looks cool. I've said my piece on it, but it looks cool. And to for clarification or just for information, Rebel Wolves is based in Warsaw.
Okay.
They were founded by, or at least a part of the team, are ex CD Projekt Red dev.
Yes, I believe I did remember hearing that in the past. Yeah.
Uh, Oh, and also if that does interest you, there is supposed to be a 20-minute gameplay video out on YouTube or right now. So
Oh,
if you
well,
want
I
to
do want to
look
watch that.
more into it, that is available to you. There's currently no release window, but it is planned to release on PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Next Tekken 8, next fighter, Fakumram. I apologize if I butchered that name. Is releasing on July 7th for early access and July 10th for the official release. Dragon Ball Z Daima content is coming to Dragon Ball Z Kakarot for those that care about Dragon Ball Z. And then Digimon Story Time Stranger got a good chunk of this showcase. They kind of give a little bit of the premise where you play as a secret investigator that it's based in Tokyo, and there's this explosion that happens that sends you 8 years into the past, and then you find like your starter Digimon, and you go on your adventure of kind of figuring out what the hell's going on, and you are able to travel in both Tokyo and the Digi world. So there's Shinjuku, and then Akihabara are two areas that they mention that you can visit. Um, and then the combat's turn-based. Very, very happy about that. Kevin,
Finally,
your thoughts?
finally a game that will reignite love of turn-based RPGs because we haven't had any in so long. I say this not as a joke because there's been too many turn-based RPGs. I love it. I want more and more and more always. It's just hilarious to me that's been like a narrative. And to be fair, it's not going to happen this time around because it's a Japanese RPG and not something like Expedition where people want to turn it into a whole thing. No, it looks interesting. I did pick up. We did our episode last week with Dala, and he had brought up Cyber Sleuth as
which is $5 on the eShop
yep,
until July 9th.
Which I'm the proud owner of because of that exact sale. Also, shouting out, the Switch sale is definitely the best one at $5. If you don't have a Switch, it is also available on PC as part of the Steam sale for $10, I believe.
Nice. Yeah, I'm waiting to get paid. Once I get paid, which should be tomorrow, I'm picking that up. Also, quick tangent, Star Renegades, which was also mentioned during the our underappreciated JRPGs for the topic of the show last week. That is also $5 on the eShop right now. So if you have a Switch, which most people do, $5 for Star Renegades, an incredibly underrated RPG or JRPG.
And then my underrated game of last week is still trapped on PS2. So what you do is you take the savings from buying those two games at only $5 a piece, and then you buy yourself a PS2 and a copy of Radiata Stories. So there you go.
Honestly, not that expensive though. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's not one of those JRPGs where it's like, hey, guess what? It's $80 for like an okay copy. I think Dala was even saying he's seen it around for like $30. It's not a particularly expensive game.
But also just getting a PS2, like not that expensive.
It is certainly not a Sega Saturn. But yeah, so I we talked about this back when we saw it during SGF and stuff, right? Like this is a franchise that I did grow up with, but I didn't really keep up with games at all. Like I just didn't keep a close tab on it over time. But after kind of hearing how much people really enjoyed Cyber Sleuth and that this is kind of continuing that style a little bit, I do wanted to give it a shot. So I'm planning to dive into Cyber Sleuth soon, and then I will begin to either feel more or less hype for Time Stranger.
Yeah, I mean, for those that I know that have played Cyber Sleuth, that were able to see Time Stranger at SGF, that was like the best thing that they saw. They said,
yeah.
So very optimistic about it. I do want to play Cyber Sleuth, check it out, and then who knows, maybe I will play Time Stranger. Time Stranger once it comes out or like later down the line. And that was it for the Bandai Namco Showcase. Next, Kevin, are we getting a Final Fantasy IX remake announcement?
Oh, I
on
hope
Sunday?
so. I want to believe. Look, I'm at the stage where I actually do think it's not happening, but I would really love to be wrong. Like I want nothing more than to wake up, sometime in the next week and be like, oh shit, it's real, it's happening. Here we are. I think the big question right now is, if it is real, when are we actually going to find out about it? This is a song and dance we've had a couple times actually on the show already. We talked about it a little bit at the start of the year. We talked about it leading into SGF. I think where we're at right now is that let's assume, for the sake of talking about this, let's assume it's real. Let's assume it is a thing that is happening.
Sure.
The big question, right, is like, when would Square actually confirm that? Because we're past FGF. I wouldn't see them doing it at something like Gamescom. It would either be like TGS, maybe the Game Awards of all things, or we are going to be hitting the actual exact 25th anniversary date in just a few days. And we have been seeing an uptick in announcements as we've been getting close to that date, ranging from things like, in Japan, they're releasing a little like VV storybook kind of deal thing that like looks extremely cute, and I might have to try and import. We've seen a whole surge of new merch. We've been seeing new art being dropped, celebrating different characters and scenes, and even a couple collaboration announcements with games I have never heard of. Like there was one called Ember Storia, which I guess is like a like strategy gotcha. No clue. Not something I've ever looked into, and not what I've played. So like they're announcing all this stuff right now, and people are hoping that that means, oh, there is actually a remake happening. Because what's really bizarre about this is we haven't really seen this much fanfare for an anniversary like in a while. Like Final Fantasy VII, sure, because we were getting new games anyways with remake and rebirth, but like Final Fantasy VIII didn't get this kind of attention, right? Like, what did they do for 8's anniversary? Like, nothing. Meanwhile, 9, we're getting this constant drip feed of, little bits of news and collaborations and merch and all this stuff. And, maybe it's just because they think 9 has a little bit more juice to squeeze out of it than 8 did, as far as current fandom and like people wanting to pick stuff up and buy things. But it certainly feels like maybe there could be more news as part of this, like maybe a remake. The pessimist in me thinks that maybe, again, because of the NVIDIA leak, we know this was something that was being worked on at some point. The question is whether or not it ever ended up getting canceled or how far development it got. I'm personally of the mind, I think it did get canceled, and what we're seeing is kind of like stuff that was kind of already in the works and being prepared for it, and now they're just repurposing it and using it to celebrate the anniversary. But we'll see. I would love to be wrong and actually get a remake announcement. But I don't know. How are you feeling on that?
I mean, I was vibing with everything that you said up until that last point where you're like, oh, they're reusing things that they were going to use. Like that doesn't make like, I don't think it. I feel like that if that project was canceled, it was canceled a while ago.
Sure.
And so I feel like that they wouldn't have prepped those type of assets that ahead of time.
That's fair.
And so I think that there's either something is happening or they're just blue balling us like so incredibly hard. Like they're just being the worst to us for that, because we talked about it before on the pod that like they gave like zero love to Final Fantasy VIII when Final Fantasy VIII's anniversary came around. And again, like
I think that's what's really frustrating about this is it'd be great if there is no remake to just like have say that by now. Like just like people are asking, people are theorizing. It's like just do the classic press release of like, hey, it's a game part we were very happy with its history and its fandom. We are currently not looking towards remaking at or something. Like, I just feel there should be a PR note about this by this point.
Yeah, it's tough though because like they also don't want to like recognize the Nvidia leak, right?
Sure.
They don't want to be like, oh yeah, like that Final Fantasy IX remake. That's not happening. It's like, oh, so there was, or like, you know what I mean?
Sure.
I think that there's definitely a way to do it. It's just it would have to be just worded in such a precise way.
Yeah.
to like to one, not recognize the Nvidia leak, and two, not recognize that there was like ever a 9 remake in development.
Yeah. Unrelated, aren't you excited for Final Fantasy Tactics Remaster, which was only revealed recently and we had never heard any rumblings of in the past?
Yeah, exactly. So it like my gut feeling is that it's real. I think it's happening. I just don't know why they haven't announced.
Yeah.
But again, like we got that, you know, like the embargo for our Dragon Quest 1 and 2 stuff was on Dragon Quest Day.
Yeah.
Square, like, you know, Square has a history of liking like doing announcements on anniversaries or like on notable days in their history. So Sunday is very possible. Or it could be Monday, you know, just
like the
because,
next
like,
business day after or whatever.
Yeah, it's the holiday weekend, in the US at least. I could see them waiting until then. And then go and yeah, so we'll see. It's one of those things where, for me, just speaking for myself, I don't really need a remake because I still have never played the original and I want to play the original.
Yeah.
And because they have the remaster with all of the quality of life improvements, like that's enough for me for now. Like,
Yeah.
but if there is a remake, dope. Super excited. Like,
for sure.
I'm gonna be super happy for you.
Yeah. Well, and that's the big question too, right? About like, it's kind of like the upcoming remake of Trails in the Sky, where it's like, you know, some people are like, oh, I don't need to play the original anymore because I'm going to play this remake and that'll be my introduction to the franchise, which I know you are not a fan of that approach. And I don't think that you would do that for FF9 in particular. But I am curious what form, like if this remake ends up being real, what does that actually mean in terms of a remake, right? Like, is it going to take some heavier liberties? Are we seeing a different combat system? Is it something that is much more directly recognizable to the source material, but is, you know, a major visual facelift with some big adjustments to combat and the like? There's just not, like, remake can mean so many things, you know, whether it's faithful or reimagining or rebooting in some way. You know, you get situations like that upcoming Trails in the Sky remake, and then situations like FF7 remake, which is not really a remake. So
yeah,
that's my biggest thing, right? Is that if this is real, I very much want to know what actually is.
Agreed. And again, we've talked at length about this on other episodes of the pod. I also just like really want to know what that looks like. Because like visually, because we've talked about it before, but there's like some sort of fan project that was like working on a remake of Final Fantasy IX, and I loved what I saw of that. And I would love if whatever Square is doing is in a similar vein as that.
Yeah.
Without knowing anything about the game itself. Like I just feel like, oh, this kind of fits the vibe based off of like the characters I've seen and the gameplay I've seen. Like, this looks correct.
Yes.
But
that is certainly
you agree with that?
Yeah, I certainly think that remake, that project captured the spirit of like what a faithful remake could look like. I don't think it's necessarily like the only answer, but I would agree that it definitely captures the right vibes.
Cool. Well, we'll check back in next week and see.
Yep. Everyone keep your eyes open
happens.
Sunday. Yeah, Sunday, Monday. The 7th is the actual anniversary. Maybe they wait till the following Monday, but I feel like if they're going to announce something like this, it's about time.
Wait, the 7th is the anniversary?
Yes.
Oh, 7th is Monday.
Oh. You said
So we'll find out Monday.
Yeah, when you said Sunday, I just went with what you said. That what day of the week that is. I don't know what time it is.
I swear I thought you said before that you said something that made me come to the conclusion of Sunday. I'm sorry, Monday. Which now I feel even stronger about. it. So
keep those eyes open Monday.
Arc System Works has announced that they're making a new action game called Damon and Baby. They showed like a 30-second trailer. They had like a small showcase last week. It appears to be an asymmetric type action game where you have like Damon is like this the big guy that you're playing as, but he has like a baby on his back, and apparently like they're like stuck together. And so the whole journey is like them trying to lift the curse to get the baby off of him. It's a funny little concept, but there was a statement that a rep from Arc System Works said regarding this. They said, quote, the game market is tough now. This is the chief creative officer, Daisuke Ishiwatari. To overcome that, Arc System Works has launched a new project. It's an action game project. Let me explain. Arc System Works is a fighting game company. I'm sure most of you recognize us as so. However, to achieve a new brand where we are known for quality, mid-range action games, we decided to establish a new pillar outside of fighting games. You might be wondering why I specifically use the term mid-range. There are many reasons, but one is that even creators themselves can enjoy striving for their dreams. In recent years, with AAA blockbusters and excellent indie titles gaining popularity, it has become extremely risky for companies to create new series. This has led to dwindling opportunities for young creators to have their own project. We feel the need to focus our efforts towards the future a decade from now, such as to build stable development schemes and to accumulate technology and know-how. Our flagship title, Guilty Gear, has now become a million-selling copywork, but its very first installment was a small-scale project. From there, over many long years, we built a foundation that could guarantee a certain level of quality in the fighting games genre. Similarly, we hope to take a step with this project that will eventually lead to bigger dreams. And precisely because they are mid-range titles, this will create many opportunities to produce many titles and cultivate many creators. And we hope that will become one of the future values of Arc System. Any thoughts, Kev?
Yeah, I mean, diversifying the profile makes sense. I think this is one of those situations where, like, I dig a lot of System Softworks like design aesthetic. Obviously there's a lot of games they make in collaboration with pre-existing IPs, but they also have stuff where they just do what they want, like with Gear. I like that look, that style, and seeing them being able to experiment with a new original IP is also in a different genre. It's one of those things where it's a risk. It's experimentation. It might not work out. It might try it out and be like, yeah, this is fine. But it could also be really cool. I mean, we talked about this a bit during the Q&A where it's like, I like weird experiments and like seeing companies try to do new, unique stuff. I don't need the refinement of a game I've already played. So, it may not work out, but I am actually excited to see them branch out and try something a little different. Especially if this is like because they are creatively interested in doing that. It's one thing where it's like, hey, we need to make the new successful extraction shooter because it's what everyone's doing. It's another thing to be like, hey, we should just like make an action game. Should we do that? That sounds fun. So I like the general idea of it. We'll see how it actually pans out, but I'm down to see it.
Yeah, I agree with you. It makes sense that Arc System Works, if anything, they'd be like, hey, let's make an action game because we're really good at making action like in the fighting games that we do.
Yeah, it's an adjacent enough genre that it kind of makes sense. I will say I do find it interesting, and maybe this is just me paying attention to the wrong things at the right time or something. It feels like there has been a bit of an influx of like isometric action titles. Like I just feel like we've seen so many revealed from Japanese devs in the last couple of years. Like even at SGF, we saw a couple revealed right there. Bandai Namco gave us that update on theirs, which, as you said, you draw comparisons to Hades. And while I don't think from what they've shown that Damon and Baby is going to be like a roguelite or anything, it is still an isometric action title. And it just feels like we're getting an influx of those, which I'm not opposed to. I like that camera angle. I'm down. But I just a trend I was noticing when I saw its reveal, where I was like, I feel like this is the fourth I've seen in less than 6 months. Maybe I'm just
I mean,
hallucinating.
I think it's just the influence of Hades.
Yeah, maybe
over the years. So, some quickies. Nintendo confirms Donkey Kong Bonanza team is a Super Mario Odyssey team.
Called it.
Duh. Chain Echoes DLC Ashes of Elrant launches on August 7th. I forgot, Kevin, have you played Chain Echoes?
I haven't yet. It's been on my to-do list, and then when finding out about the DLC, it basically turned into like, well, I'm just gonna wait till it's complete, then I'm gonna take the plunge. So that is now on my schedule more because that DLC is now we have that release date. I messed with it a little bit. I think it was on Game Pass, but like there was other stuff I was paying. But I want to give it a real serious push. I'll probably pick it up on Switch too and see what's what. I've heard some good things. I thought the opening was solid.
Yeah, I thought the opening of that game was very good. I was told by so many people that like, yo, this game's incredible. Like, you need to play it. Da, da, da. I put in like 8 hours, and like, I really wasn't. There wasn't a lot going on for me. Just really didn't click. Sadly, I want to like give it another shot, but it just really wasn't grabbing me. I thought again the opening was strong, and there's like definitely some interesting aspects with like what we would probably consider the main character of this game. But outside of that, like it just wasn't really grabbing me. Like the world wasn't really grabbing me. I don't know. It was very
Just didn't do it for you.
I'm very upset that that it didn't click with me, because even like
It's actually
Ben Starr, like he like when we talked, he said like, dude, Chained Echoes is like amazing, and I'm like, okay, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Ben's favorite Final Fantasy is also 8, which that's also a divisive title. So like that does happen. I will say something I find very interesting about Chained Echoes, and this is not to say that you cannot be a fan of both or for any reason. It seemed like a weird fan-based beef about like that game versus Sea of Stars, because they were both kind of like bigger budget indie darling RPGs, calling back to older JRPGs. And there were a lot of people who were like, a lot of the people that like to hate on Sea of Stars would like bring up Chained Echoes as like an example of like how to do it right. And I know a lot of people who loved Sea of Stars and just did not jive with Chained Echoes whatsoever. And again, they're not saying you can't like both. There absolutely are people who do. But there was this. I just noticed this while talking to some people and like seeing community reactions, especially on like Reddit. Really seems like people want to crowd around one of those two as being like a good indie RPG. I don't know. Why not both? But I haven't played it for myself, so I can't really like weigh in on my own thoughts of like those styles against each other.
Like, I would say that in general, I probably enjoy the combat system of Chained Echoes more. It's just kind of more my style, and like I just think that there's like a little bit more variety in the mechanics. But when it comes to just like, I don't know, when it comes to like the things that I think they're two very different type of like
Yes.
RPGs and like journeys. Like Chained Echoes is like a very kind of like traditional, like, hey, you're going to this town, and then you're doing this stuff, and then you're going to the next town and you're doing this stuff. And like I just feel like I would get to these towns and like I don't like there's not really anything going on. And so like the world just doesn't feel interesting to me. While like Sea of Stars, you were going on like a more fantastical adventure, and you're going to like very specific locations to do very specific things. You're not really going to towns as often and things like that. And so like I think comparing the two, just because they kind of fit like a similar budgetary
Sure.
like lane is very odd.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm not like against giving it another shot down the line. But it is something where it's just like, huh, I don't think this is really doing it for me. So I'm gonna like return to this at another time.
Yeah.
Next up, Super Mario Strikers is available on Nintendo Switch Online, at least once this episode is released publicly. It will be available on NSO. So if you want to play the best Mario sports game, it is now on Switch, which is awesome.
Hell yeah. And now we can directly compare it to the Switch one. I already forgot the name. Battle League. Yep, Battle League.
Yeah. I will say though, I forgot the actual title, but the Mario Golf game on Switch is very fun. If you're playing with like friends and you're just doing like, a gentleman's 18, very fun. King of Fighters 15 is one of the PS Plus games for this month. So if you have a PS Plus subscription, you can pick up King of Fighters 15 for free. And lastly, Grand Blue Fantasy Relink has officially sold 2 million copies. Now, before we get into the what we've been playing for this week, because it's a new month, I want to go over all the release dates for all the games that are worth talking about for this podcast. So for July, we have Patapon 1 and 2 Replay for PS5, Switch, and PC, releasing on July 11th. We have Hunter x Hunter, Nen Cross Impact for PS5, Switch, and PC on July 16th. Donkey Kong Bonanza for Switch 2 on July 17th. Shadow Labyrinth, PS5, Xbox Series, Switch 2, Switch, and PC on July 17th. Super Mario Party Jamboree, Switch 2, coming on July 24th. No Sleep for Konami Dante from AI the Somnium. Okay, I'm gonna restart that one. No Sleep for Konami Date from AI the Somnium Files, Switch 2, Switch, PC on July 25th.
I know you can do it.
That's probably my most anticipated game for this. Ratatan releasing in early access on Steam on July 25th. And Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC on July 31st. Now, we're going to get into what we've been playing for this week. Kevin, you and I have both been diving into Persona 5 X,
the Phantom. Yeah. I think you've probably put more total time in than me. Like, I think I've started playing it before you did, but then I also stopped playing, which is maybe already previewing my thoughts on it a little. Yeah, like, look, this is the newest gacha game, the new hottest one to leverage an IP, but it is interesting in that it seems to be trying to do things in like a in-universe canon way and not just like, oh, other universe crossover of all your favorite characters, whatever. But it does come with like, it bears the weight of what it means to be a gacha game, ultimately you're going to be faced with a pay-for store and you are going to be doing your rolls to pull your characters and you hope you get the 5 stars with the cool designs that'll actually be useful in your party, etc., etc. I will say, before I get into my thoughts on something, I will preface, and this goes back to what you were saying about like give the game so much time. I've heard that like third palace on, it like finds its stride, like the writing and everything gets stronger around that point. Because I will say, I have not cared really for the plot of the first palace.
You don't like the Subway Slammer?
Oh my god! I mean, I love the memes that are coming into existence because of him. Look, minor spoilers for anyone that's thinking of checking this game out. So, the general concept, other than adding in some plot elements to make the gacha side of things make sense, very much kind of similar vibes of Persona 5. there are bad guy adults you have to deal with. The underlying theming's a little different because it has to do a lot with sort of like choosing to, do something with your life and like not just like sit idly by. And there's this whole kind of tone of that, which I kind of dig. But the first like bad guy adult you deal with is a guy called the Subway Slammer, and it's literally a dude who just like has a chip on his shoulder and shoves people in the subway. And like that's like his intro. Like
Yeah.
he does like a ninja move and disappears into a crowd once, which was kind of silly. And he does one particularly bad shove to a character that who like falls on train tracks, but it's like not when a train's coming or anything especially horrifying. It's like, oh, that's a bad fall, and like they've sustained injuries, but then they just get picked up off the tracks and it's fine. It just feels so low stakes compared to like any other Persona villain. Like compare that to like the first villain of 5, and it is just not even remotely a contest of who is a worse person.
Yeah, no. So I saw a very funny thing where it's like, this guy would have been a Mementos boss in Persona 5.
At 100%. Absolutely. That's actually a great way of framing it. Like a random side quest. Oh yeah, like this is bad and like you shouldn't be shoving people, but like that's what we're going with, like our first serious threat. It's just, and have you gotten far enough to know his motivation, like why he's the way he is?
Yes.
It almost makes it funnier to me, like just how underwhelming this guy's plot is. Like it's pain. I am going to give it a heavier push to get to later stuff because like I think the core combat and stuff feels good. The daily investment is extremely minimal, which is something I appreciate. I don't need to spend an hour out of my day to stay on top of dailies. Like, cool. But it's like the writing just feels not quite there in the first dungeon to me. And there's just that level of like, this is a gacha game that just makes it harder for me to also stay as invested.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm definitely higher on it than you are. I don't think that you have to really commit to the gotcha aspects of the game. Like, like the aspect of just doing it, sure. Like, that's, I can understand that not being an ideal thing for you because like, I get it. But I also think that, up to the part that I'm at in the game, I didn't have to pull any characters if I didn't, like, unless I really wanted to. Like, you can just like stick with what you have and then just like, and just keep playing the game as, you can make it a single player, like, offline experience as much as any normal single player game. But like, I'm sure at some point, yes, you're going to need to like do a bit more, but yeah, I think like at least so far in the opening, it's not bad. And it really is just like a new Persona. Like, this happens to be a gacha game. I also, very random thing, but I really like Merope, the new Velvet Room assistant.
Mm-hmm.
She just has like a lot of personality from the little time that I've had with her. Like, I love how she just like throws Wonder into the Velvet Room every time. Yeah, literally just grabs his arm and just chucks him through the door. It's just like,
it's not like a fun pull. It's like, hey, just go. Like,
yeah, no, I really love how like she comes off as very sassy, but a very like pleasant, charismatic type way. And so yeah, I've been enjoying it so far. Like, there's definitely more systems at play than I would like as someone who dedicated like a whole year to consistently playing Honkai Star Rail, and I was like obsessed with that game. I think this game has probably even more systems at play than that, which is not ideal.
That actually is like, gacha pulls are definitely like the obvious surface level issue with gacha, but like the way resources are handled is also a level of that. And I think that's actually what I like brush more hard against, because it's like, it's not just, oh, your characters level up from battles. It's like, no, you have to harvest resources that allow them to level up, but then you also have to level up their skills, but then you also have to level up, I forget the term for it, but there's another passive thing that you level up for them. There's like 8 different resources you have to grind to level up different aspects of characters and personas. And it's just like, it's a lot. Like
Yeah,
it's ultimately not like impossible to keep up with or anything. Like it's totally doable, but it's just part of like the gacha cycle of keeping characters updated and having your overall power score be good enough. That is just running on a treadmill for me.
yeah, so it's like their level, and then it's like their persona abilities, then it's like their weapons, and then it's like one other thing, like, and then you have like specific stuff for like Wonder and his personas. It's like it's a lot. It's definitely a lot. Um and I'm curious to see how the game is going to evolve over time. Because yeah, I think it's after the first or second palace where the writer for Royal took over.
Mm.
So, and I don't know like how long the game has been going in China, like where they're at, and if like the story's still going, or because that's another thing that's interesting is like, they're structuring this as a traditional Persona game, and so it's like when like is there just going to be an end and then you just shut down the game, or like how's that going to work?
Yeah, I mean, like they did that with Nier, right? Like that was a full-fledged gotcha where like
Oh,
you
really? I did
kind
not
of
know that.
yeah, no, like they just they the story ended and they ended service. And it's like, yeah, I mean, you probably spent a bunch of money on this to get characters and stuff and you can't log in anymore, but story's finished. There you go.
Wow.
Yeah, it some people thought it was neat. Some did not. uh, so yeah, I don't know what the plan is for this in terms of like what that long-term support looks like, right? Like there hits a point where whatever, you do 8 dungeons and like do we call it there? Is there do you just kind of keep making dungeons as long as people are paying? Like what's the plan? I don't know.
Yeah. I will say one of the things that I definitely do not like, or I think is like really like, yeah, I just don't like it. That's the best way I just don't like it, is the code names this time around. They're bad.
You don't like soy? Or one character who just goes by their name shortened? Uh I forget what it was. Like it's like Motoko becomes Toko or something. Like that's it.
Yeah, it's not good. Like your main character is Wonder, which I'm like, okay, that's like the least bad, I guess. And then your owl is called Cattle. You're an owl, not a cow. And then the first person that you recruit, her name is Closer. At least there's like a theme there because
Yeah.
it's like baseball themed, but it's also just like, come on,
There,
like,
so I'm looking it up right now. There's actually multiple characters where their code name is literally just their name but shorter. Like uh Kotone Montaigne is Mont, Yukimi is Yuki, Tomoko is Moko, and it's just like, all right. Oh, Leo's code name is Leon. It's definitely it yeah, the code names are not great. A lot of them. Some seem pretty good. Like okay, the one I'll give points to is Kyoshi is key, but it's spelled differently because it's like a key. I'm like, okay,
hmm.
that's at least that's kind of wordplay-y. Like I'm down. But yeah, I do agree overall the code names are not very strong.
They're not good. They're not good. Um, any other thoughts on Persona 5 X before we move on?
I'm gonna give it a more serious push. I kind of stepped away after I got to like the main meat, and I was just not. I really just did not care for the first chapter. But I've heard enough people say that like second and even more so the third dungeons are like an improvement. So I want to at least get there before I like totally write it off. I know I was more negative for sure, but I do want to give it a real shot.
So, did you finish the first palace?
No, I'm like near the end of it, I think.
Okay, because I'm like going back to the palace after what's her face's awakening.
Yes. You
Okay, so
we're about at the same part, I think.
we're
Yeah.
basically at the same place. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, yeah, I'm interested in to keep on playing, and like even though I don't like mobile games, it's like it's nice that like I have something that I somewhat care about that like is available on my phone, considering my schedule, and I can just be like, oh, I'm gonna hop on this and knock this out. I'm trying to do the main content stuff on computer because I like to see everything.
Sure.
But like if I need to do my dailies, I can just whip out my phone, do it that way.
Yeah, the spread progress is really nice for that actually, because again, like the dailies are very low maintenance. It's like grind a couple resources and that knocks out 3 different daily requirements and
Yep.
you're good. Like it's very minimal for dailies, which is something I appreciate. I mean, it allows you to really just focus on like, okay, if I really want to make a real push, what's the main content I need to engage and do with? And then when you're just on, life support mode, checking in to make sure you're keeping your resource gain steady, it's not that bad.
Yeah, I'm basically at the point now where I'm just like, oh, like what's the thing that I need to upgrade right now? Okay, I'm just gonna like grind a bunch of these materials. Because I am being a little bit of a stickler, because like I don't want to upgrade weapons until they get like their first legendary weapon.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been like, some of them have like purple, and I'm like, nope, I'm just gonna wait. I'm just gonna keep this at level 1, and I'm gonna wait until you get something good, and then that happens. Which that's a whole other currency, the weapon draw system as well. So anyway, for the topic of the show this week, we got our topic of the show from one of our patrons, Antique Arcade, who's become a good friend of ours. We got to meet them at SGF because they work with Naomi Kyle. If you know Naomi Kyle from IGN and the likes, they sent a very cool topic idea that I definitely don't think I would have ever thought of. I don't know about you, Kev, but I'm gonna read this out really quick. So the JRPG of a generation. It's 2025, and we are rapidly approaching the end of the 9th console generation. What are the JRPGs that defined a generation? Yeah, and we're gonna start with Gen 3 because that's really where things kind of take off in a way. So
Yeah, certainly from a Western perspective of like where JRPGs start, at least, like,
yeah.
And also just for my own, like, I feel like you and I, we just don't have as much of a root in stuff before then. Like, I can shout out like Ultima 4 on the Apple II was neat for its time, but I don't have like the actual connection to anything earlier than NES to like, and even NES honestly is kind of tenuous compared to SNES. Like, that's really, I think, the strongest gen that I have like a base in, like, started playing, younger.
No, definitely agree with you. So yeah, we're gonna start with Gen 3, which is the Sega Master System, the Atari 7800, and the NES.
Yes. Which,
Kevin, what are you thinking here?
Well, before I dive into my answer, I do want to give one quick clarification too. System generations are kind of a silly thing, honestly, especially especially in like the last decade. It gets a little muddled. For the sake of keeping things a little consistent with this list, we're basically going with how people have chosen to define it on Wikipedia. So, this gen, I think it's pretty fairly agreed. But once we get to some later years, we're just going to keep with that definition, because stuff like the Switch and the Wii U and some of the handheld timing, it just gets a little all over the place. But for third gen, I feel like the answer has to be Dragon Quest, right? Like that's like the JRPG. Like that's what, like it's not necessarily, it didn't have the same level of fame in the West as like Final Fantasy did, which even then I think Final Fantasy didn't really truly take off until a couple entries later over here. But like, while it technically isn't the very first like JRPG, it is absolutely the first very successful, very popular game that helped solidify what it means to be that style of game. And so like, if we were talking about like the best NES JRPG, sure, we could talk about like Dragon Quest 3 or something. But I think if we're talking about like the definitive game of that gen, that like, when I think definitive, I think of like influence, right? Like this is something that like went on to inspire later game design choices. There is a degree of popularity that plays a role here too, like how well known that particular title is. And I just think that when it comes to that gen, Dragon Quest is it.
Interesting. Because I think I would say Dragon Quest 3. Because I do think that like I agree that Dragon Quest is the blueprint 100%. In that sense, but I also think that Dragon Quest 3, like the way that it built upon it, it for me it feels like it's I'm not remotely trying to go as far as erased, but it one upped it
It
in
like
a way where
superseded
it's like
kind of like
it superseded it, yes. And I think that there's just like there's so many games nowadays that I guess like it depends on how you want to argue or make the claims of how base level JRPGs were designed following those releases. Because like, yeah, if we're gonna go based off that concept, then yeah, it's Dragon Quest, because it's just like, oh yeah, you're a guy, you go to different towns, you do different things. Like, sure,
yeah,
but then if you look at Dragon Quest 3, it does all of that on that system and blows it out of the water.
sure.
Like and I think that like um when I played Dragon Quest 1, 2 and 3 last year, like late 2023 into early 2024, like I walked away more from Dragon Quest 3 being like, "Oh, this is the game that I'm getting like, I see so much influence to future games that I've played
Mhm.
in a way that Dragon Quest doesn't." And that's one of the things was just like, because when we talked about when I sent you the pitch for the topic, you were like, what are we going based off of definitive? And I'm like,
Yeah.
whatever you define that to be.
Yeah.
And so I think we just like, there's different definitions of like what you would consider definitive. Because like, I agree with you. I don't think best is particularly definitive, but I think that in some cases, and probably most cases when we talk about this topic, it likely is going to be one of the best, if not the
Sure.
best. And so I think that like in this instance, like Dragon Quest, like absolutely, I totally understand like where you're coming from with that. But for me, I think it's Dragon Quest 3.
Yeah, I think it depends on like how much credit you're giving to what, right? Because 3 absolutely dialed in a lot of specific things. There's a little bit more meat to what happens in terms of like the story arc and but I mean you also see that kind of you know filter in a little bit over multiple games, right? Like 2 introduced having multiple party members and was a continuation, and then you start having Square putting out the Final Fantasy games, and that introduces things like having actual choosable classes and like each of these games added something. I think I just really give additional reverence to like this was the first, and like it
Yeah, and see,
absolutely.
I'm
Yeah,
very much a hater when it comes to that. Like
sure.
when people say, "Oh, it did it first," I'm like, "Yeah, but this did it better." So like,
Sure, it did it better, but like ultimately the thing that inspired like we don't have Final Fantasy without Dragon Quest 1. Right? Like literally that franchise only exists because Square saw
yeah,
the success of that game and went, "Okay, maybe we can make these too." Like
yeah, but that's to me, that's like okay. I don't.
yeah.
I just don't. Yeah, it's just one of those things. Like I don't. And see, now that we're like talking about it, I don't have an example in my mind. But it's just like you could argue it like with Breath of the Wild versus Tears of the Kingdom. Oh, Breath of the Wild's better because it did the
Whoa,
thing
whoa,
first. It's
hold
like,
on, hold on. That's not again, we're not talking about better, we're talking about definitive. That's why I even clarified with you. Are we doing best or are we doing definitive? Because those are different things.
but like, okay, but okay, sure.
Also, I actually do
But
think Breath of the Wild's better than Tears of the Kingdom, and that's a whole other take that we have
and
not
see, yeah,
no time to
that's
dive into. But
yeah, and see, I disagree. But
I
like,
know.
no, but like the definitive, like no, the definitiveness of like Breath of the Wild is the definitive game over Tears of the Kingdom because it did it first. It's just like,
I
but
mean, it
if it
is.
did, I disagree.
If
And
I'm
if
talking
there's
about
certain
like a definitive Switch game, it's going to be Breath of the Wild. Like,
yeah, I'm not. I don't. I can't. I cannot hold hands with you there, brother. Um, yeah, I would say no. I would say Tears of the Kingdom, but um, over Breath of the Wild, and that's what I'm saying. It's just like I don't, because like the thing is like if we're making the argument of definitiveness, and like how that kind of parallels to the best. If we made if we're saying like, oh, it did it first, it's just like, okay, if it did whatever it is first, and then something else did it better.
Well,
Like, how do you?
It's not just a matter of being first, though. It's like, again, I'm ranking it more so by influence and like establishing it, because like Dragon Quest was not the very first JRPG.
No,
it is certainly the biggest one that like established what we now like view as the genre. But there were other games that came before it. And so that's where I'm coming from a lot, is like where that influence comes from. I would argue Breath of the Wild is a more definitive game than Tears of the Kingdom, because we've got 75 different Breath of the Wild clones, 5 years later.
Yeah, and
that's just ultimately we're coming down to our definitions of definitive, right? You're looking at like what is the pinnacle, and I'm looking at what is the blueprint.
No, and like I don't mind like something being the blueprint either. Like I think they can go hand in hand, and there can be like a back and forth, a push and pull on that. Like I'm not saying it's it's all one sided there.
Sure.
Like again, because I get what you're saying. It's just like, yeah, Dragon Quest started it all, so it's Dragon Quest. I totally get that, but I'm also just like, yeah, but Dragon Quest 3 like superseded that and like all of these games that I like think about, that I like really love. I'm like, oh, this was the game that started all that. Like in the way of like the sense of adventure and the sense of like the events that can take place during a JRPG like that. It's like, those are the aspects of like that I think about. But I also think that, again, if we're going back to just the bare base level of everything, then yeah, it's hard to argue against Dragon Quest.
Yeah,
the original.
And like ultimately this is like a semantics thing, right? Of like how we're defining and like how we interpret that.
Yes.
So we're also going to absolutely just go back and forth multiple times at different points. But like, and I think we're gonna have a few games we talk about upcoming in similar situations. I mean, the Zelda thing is already a great example, even though that's not the game I picked for definitive of that gen.
Oh no, because it's not JRPG either. So we're talking about JRPGs.
Oh yeah, and that's why you're going to be very mad at one of the ones I talk about.
Okay.
Anyways, yeah. So I feel like that covers third gen, though. Well, ultimately, we definitely are on like the Dragon Quest train. It's just like which one we view as being definitive of that gen based on the old man or the better younger one.
Fourth gen, I think this is going to be the easiest and most straightforward one, but we got the NEC Turbo Graphics 16, Sega Genesis, SNK Neo Geo, and this SNES. Chrono Trigger, let's move on.
I will say, I don't want to take too much time on this, because I actually did have the thought where, especially with how I'm defining definitive, look, Chrono Trigger is that shit, right? Like Chrono Trigger is such a huge deal. But I also feel like, weirdly enough, not a lot of games like directly pull from it that often. Like sometimes there are games that are very clearly like, oh, you're trying to do Chrono Trigger again. But in terms of like lasting, long-term, like big impact, I almost feel like FF4 or 6 had a bigger, like wider net cast. But yeah, it's Chrono Trigger. Well, I feel like Chrono Trigger is just the easy answer here. Of just people are going to say, "Yep, that's the one from that gen." Moving on.
And see, that's like that's the interesting thing, though, right? Is that like I feel like that the sides have flipped a little, because like you're right. Like Chrono Trigger. Like I think most people will say is the best JRPG on the SNES.
Yeah.
But the influence of it, isn't as easily shown on the sleeves of future games.
Yeah.
Where something like Final Fantasy 4 or 6 is just like Final Fantasy 6 was like, oh, this is like the first, like, this feels cinematic.
Yeah.
and in a way that we never saw before.
Yeah, and breaking away, at least within that franchise, like more heavily breaking away from being traditional straight up fantasy. Not that there weren't like JRPGs already doing that their own way, like Phantasy Star on Sega systems, but like in terms of a notoriety, like something that had a larger reach. We're gonna have like 4 gens in a row of just glazing Square Enix and the company that like formed it, but that's just how it is right now for these early years.
Yeah. There's a specific generation I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on when we get there.
There was one that was the hard one, and I'm sure my answer is going to piss you off.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay,
like
no,
Chrono Trigger's probably the easy, for this one.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I feel like this one and the next one are going to be the most like, it's this. Like, what do you want me to say?
Yeah. Like, I do think the definitiveness on this one is more just based off of like, hey, this is like arguably the best JRPG, arguably one of the best games of all time.
Yeah. It goes back to us talking about IGN's top 25 list, and it's like, do you think there was any debate, or did they just all go, we have to put Chrono Trigger at 1? Like, that's just that's what goes there.
Yeah, which again, I disagree with.
But, yeah. But it's a very common. That is not unique to IGN. That is lots of best of all time lists for JRPG.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a top however games of all time list where Chrono Trigger's not in the top 10.
Yeah.
Which, okay.
You can have opinions. It's all right.
Yeah, I can have opinions. Next gen. Was it that? Is that a 3DO? 3DO?
Yeah. And then I mean more higher profile N64, PS1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sega Saturn. Is considered a part of that.
Yep.
Yeah, Final Fantasy 7.
Yeah. I mean that's just
there it is.
Yeah, like
that's fact.
Yeah. Like maybe
factual information.
Maybe there's an argument for like within Japan some title had larger influence, but certainly worldwide, I mean FF7 is just like it is that one. There are like 6 other JRPGs during that era that I would say are better, but in terms of like influence, impact, pop culture, like oh my god. there's no arguing that.
Yeah. Can we just move on? Can we just move on after that? Because like, yeah, there's nothing else to really be sad about.
Yeah, it's Final Fantasy 7. Yeah. It was that bitch.
Oh, I'm thinking about something.
What are you thinking about?
Something's coming together in my mind about a game you're gonna pick. So 6th gen, we got the Sega Dreamcast, we got the PS2, we got the GameCube, and we got the Xbox. I want you to go first on this one.
Okay, so this one, this one gets to be a little tougher because the game I immediately think about is one where you begin to stretch the definition of JRPG as some people understand it.
Sure.
Because it gets into the whole thing of like, well, are action RPGs still JRPGs? Different makers, that kind of thing. But in my mind, though, when I think PS2 and I think like, that RPG, it's Kingdom Hearts 2.
I didn't think you were gonna say that.
Oh.
I genuinely thought I was gonna come through with Kingdom Hearts 2, and you were not gonna agree with me. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. No. Here's the thing, though. It's tough. Here's the thing. No, here's what I'll say. Here's what I want to say to this, and like and you continue. I think that there's 2 games that are in consideration here, and I think it's Kingdom Hearts 2 or Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah,
I genuinely do. Like, I think that like because initially I was just like, okay, Kingdom Hearts 2. I was like, but maybe it's Kingdom Hearts 1.
That is a little tough because I think like Kingdom Hearts because I think Kingdom Hearts had more initial influence in terms of like introducing the concept, right? It's like, oh, it's Square, who everyone at that time knew for Final Fantasy, working with Disney to make this new game that's like a crossover of Disney stuff with Final Fantasy stuff and like what's happening with that. And then all of a sudden we're introduced to like Utada Hikaru, which is just like a whole J-pop vibe that was incredible and worked out its own way. Like we were introduced to the concept of Kingdom Hearts with obviously the first game. But I feel like 2 had a much larger impact in terms of like the dialing in its mechanics and its gameplay formula and really showing what like an action RPG can be.
Oh, 100% there.
Like, yeah,
Agree with that.
I think on the merits of its own gameplay and not just like, holy shit, Final Fantasy and Disney together. Like I think that's most of what gets Kingdom Hearts 1 going. And like, yes, it does have like a good story and there's good stuff going there. But I feel like 2 on its own merits is just like that really solidified that legacy and where that series ended up going moving ahead. Not to mention like all the seeds it lays down to like hint at what was going to happen in 3, and little did we know we were getting like 8 different spinoffs first, but also setting up like Birth by Sleep and all the different other like tangents. Like I don't know, like there was just like I feel like when it comes to establishing the greater like what Kingdom Hearts is, I feel like 2 is the true epicenter of that. And in terms of, like going back to also just like Kingdom Hearts 2 in general, like look, when I think of JRPGs, I absolutely think of like the golden era of the turn-based style and things that I really love. I think of that as being like SNES to PS1, and I like a lot of stuff that came out on PS2, but honestly, a lot of them did not hit as hard for me as like what was back on the SNES and PS1. And when I think of things that were influential, I absolutely do think of like Kingdom Hearts 2 really branching out that genre definition and doing what it does. As much as I love me a turn-based RPG, but even when I think of like my favorite ones back then, right? I think of Final Fantasy X. I think of Shadow Hearts, which I would never pick as like the definitive game of that gen. Like unless we want to get into talking about the handhelds and like we get GBA in the mix. Was GBA the same era considered? I forget how they do that breakdown.
So here's the thing is that because I think there is a conversation. I think we need to go back a gen, and there is a conversation that needs to be had.
Oh, Pokemon. Yeah, if you want to include, because that's the thing, right? Including the handhelds.
I actually think Pokemon Red and Blue. It is more definitive than
in terms of
Final Fantasy VII.
Long-term influence and becoming the largest IP in the world.
Yeah,
like that. Yeah, no, that's fair. And that's
so we're redoing that really quick because I was like, because to be fair, to be clear, we're looking at for the audience, we're looking at a list of specifically consoles. We're not looking at handhelds.
Yeah,
but we were also considering handhelds. And Pokemon did go to my mind. I'm like, wait a minute. I feel like we passed the Pokemon, the Red and Blue generation. Yeah. So I was like, let's double back really quick and like fix our mistakes here.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Definitely Pokemon Red and Blue.
Yeah, like Chrono Trigger is, the best game of that gen, arguably. But yeah, in terms of long-term influence, especially if we're including handhelds, it's Pokemon Red Blue by a mile.
Yeah.
Like as much as I love Chrono Trigger, like I can't, you cannot deny talking about how Dragon Quest created the JRPG as we know it, Pokemon created the monster RPG. It established that style and popularized it. Even if there were other similar pursuits around the same time.
Okay, back to Gen 6.
So with that in mind, like I just look at all the different games that came out across, like even including handhelds with GBA, where it's like, oh yeah, I really love like Golden Sun, but I'm not going to say Golden Sun was like the definitive RPG of that gen. That's wild talk. So when I just look at like what was happening in that landscape, it's just, I honestly can't think of anything other than Kingdom Hearts 2 that like deserves that title. Other than maybe Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah. So with me, it's just like Kingdom Hearts was like kind of like what you're saying with Dragon Quest, right? It's like it was the first one. It was like, and it set up this new pillar, this new like super significant franchise for Square Enix, that also like just is still to this day near unfathomable to think about existing. And it works, and it's like really good. And even though I think that the first game has started to show its age, it really was like there was nothing else like it when it came out.
Yeah,
there was nothing else like it. And even though like Kingdom Hearts is my favorite game of all time, I think that game has aged incredibly well. I think it'll still play incredibly well probably near the time I die. And I do think it did a lot for the action RPG genre. And I think that everything that you're saying is absolutely true. It's tough. It's tough. Like I just don't. I can see both sides to it.
To 1 versus 2,
and
or to
also-
just like this being picked at all?
1 versus 2.
Okay.
No, Kingdom Hearts 2 is definitely in the conversation.
Yeah.
Just I think for different reasons than Kingdom Hearts 1. And then another thing with Kingdom Hearts 1 is that that I do one of the few things that I give it over Kingdom Hearts 2 is that it has it has the Disney magic in a way that none of the other Kingdom Hearts games do.
Yeah.
It has a lot more of that whimsical Disney magic that just isn't as present in future Kingdom Hearts games.
I'd buy that, yeah, because I feel like 2 leans a little harder, even if like later games began to dilute some of the actual Final Fantasy characters. I would say 2 on leaned a little heavier into certain like JRPG tropes and that form of storytelling, where there's like a heavier focus on some of the like long-term mystery aspects of, what is the Keyblade? Who are these previous
Keyblade?
Yeah.
Which I know, I eat that shit up.
Yeah, but I think that's a tone, and that's another reason why I feel like I would pick 2 over 1, just because like I feel like 1 is a game that came out and I liked it and I enjoyed it. And I was like, yeah, I'd play a 2, and 2 was the one where I was like, oh, I'm into this. Like I like that. Yeah. That really. Like, that's what made me excited for more games. And then I played 7 more and finally went, okay, maybe I'm not actually into this anymore. But that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah. See, this feels like a Dragon Quest 3 situation, but it's flip-flop.
Yeah.
And what you're saying, I agree with. Like, I'm like, listen, I think that Kingdom Hearts 1, like, there is a historical aspect to it that cannot be significance that cannot be denied, but I do think when it comes to definitive of that era, I agree with you. I think it's Kingdom Hearts 2. I'm glad that we came to that conclusion.
Right.
I genuinely did not expect, because again, I knew that you give more Kingdom Hearts 2 props than I initially thought you would give.
Yeah, because in general,
but I still did not expect you to be like, oh yeah, it's Kingdom Hearts 2.
Well, because by the time you and I started actually talking about games and stuff often, I was like kind of out of the Kingdom Hearts sphere. Like I just didn't really care. Like 3 just did not do much for me, and I was just kind of tired by that point. Like I just had not enjoyed because I did like keep up with that franchise like game for game for the most part. I think the only one I didn't actually play right away was like Recoded. And so like. Yeah, I was on top of that series for a while, and I was in it during like 2 Birth by Sleep, and around like, even though I still liked it, I think around Dream Drop Distance I began to go like, you know what, I might actually just be done. I don't know. I don't think this is hitting like it was. But that's a whole other.
Dream Drop is where there were mistakes made for sure.
Well, I also didn't really care for 358 Days, but I was more forgiving at the time, I think. And I was excited for Birth by Sleep still.
Oh, what? 358? Oh,
no,
that's crazy.
I mean, like, I like the story. Well, yeah, because 358 is where, like, I feel like you begin to get some of the, like, the story keeps expanding and expanding and expanding. And then also just mechanically, I did not like it. Like, I did not like playing. The act of playing 358 was not.
Yeah, the act of playing it was, as someone who replayed it over the past couple of years, it's a bit rough. But
it's rough. Yeah.
Boy, is that story good. That story's so good. Okay. Next gen is the Xbox 360, the PS3, and the Wii.
You go first.
Right. Okay. Is this the one where you think you're gonna piss me off?
I mean, not piss you off, but you're not gonna like what I say. You first. I want to hear what you're thinking for this.
This one's actually hard because I don't feel like that there's.
It's a difficult one to pick because I will say that as like I said earlier, PS1. SNES is like a golden era for me. And while this is not to say that there are not good games that came out in this era, I think a lot of people would say that this was probably the weakest gen for JRPGs. Like this was just a lot of companies were experimenting. They were trying to figure out what they were doing going into like, higher graphic space. Do we adapt to like doing full 3D and like what does gameplay look like in that form? Varying degrees of success. And there are some games that I very much love in this gen. But it is, I think, a harder one to look at and be like, oh yeah, like this game, this was the big culture influence. Because I would say, honestly, this is when JRPGs were at their weakest culturally in the West, at least. this is when we get into the era of gaming in general is a little more focused on like first-person shooters and multiplayer games, and got to get that gamer score. And JRPGs, I think, took a little bit of a backseat. They thrived pretty well, I think, in the handheld space more so. But it is, I think, kind of a weird era. I'm realizing now that you can't go first because you did not prep a full list in advance. So I will say,
no.
Yeah, I will
I'm doing
say,
it by the hip. I'm doing it by the
hip. I know you're
hip.
doing by hip. Okay, so here's the thing.
I think I know what you're gonna pick, though. I think I know what you're gonna pick. Go ahead.
Okay. Here's the thing. If we accept that action RPGs are fine, like with Kingdom Hearts 2, and we're talking about influential. That is, again, my main metric when I'm talking about definitive.
Sure.
I think looking at this era, there is a RPG from Japan that is absolutely the biggest influence of this gen by far, and it's Dark Souls.
Okay. You're going to base off that route.
Yeah.
I mean,
Dark Souls. It literally, like, similar to how Pokemon made a whole genre. Dark Souls has created an entire style, and a lot of people learned the wrong lessons from it and tried copying it. And as we've lamented,
for the sake of it, like, not being a Japanese role-playing game in the traditional sense of what we continue to talk about as a JRPG, what would you pick outside of that? Because that was not what I expected to say.
Sure.
But there's something that I think that you could still say.
Maybe. Look, here, man, like, I know we've had this talk, but I haven't really pushed you on this one. I think Dark Souls still counts, and I'm sorry. Like, especially if we open the floor to action RPGs like Kingdom Hearts, I need more. What is
not the same?
It is an RPG, and sure, it's darker in tone. It's not about friendship, and it's like, but what are we using as like the declaring, like, define something as a Japanese RPG? It is certainly a very different.
It has the blueprints more so of a Western RPG.
How so, though? Like, what about, like, honestly, I don't, like, other than being actiony and slower in pace, like, it does a lot of things that are still very much its own. Like, it's descended from what From was already doing with stuff like Kingsfield and obviously Demon Souls in the PS3. Like, there's Western flavor, absolutely. Like, I mean, yeah, we've got knights in armor and fighting dragons, but, like, so does every major JRPG, a lot of JRPGs that were influenced by Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, like, honestly, I think Dark Souls is my answer here. I'm trying to figure out what other game you're thinking I should have said, or that I would have said. Because again, there was a lot this gen that's kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just doing a general search.
Sure.
I did a general Google search. Is Dark Souls a JRPG?
Yeah.
And a lot of what I'm seeing is no, it is not. And even apparently Sony has said that.
I mean, Sony can be wrong about their own art. like whatever. I don't know, man. I think it does still count. I think there is a bit of a weird exceptionalism that comes with, like, being like, no, this one doesn't count because it doesn't. But that's a whole other conversation. I think
it fits under the umbrella of this podcast for sure.
Yeah.
I just don't see it as a JRPG.
Sure.
That's my personal opinion. But like, so we know that your pick is Dark Souls.
Yes.
And if we're like, here's the thing. If we want to consider that, like, for those that care and like think that Dark Souls is a JRPG, 100% Dark Souls is the answer.
Yeah.
Like, not even a question.
In terms of influence, yeah.
Yeah, in terms of influence, absolutely. Definitive game for sure.
Yeah.
But if we're not including that, where are you sitting now? What are some that come to mind?
I'm honestly not sure, so I'm very curious which one you thought I was going to say.
I thought you were going to come with the Drakengard 3. That's what I thought you were going to come swinging with.
No, because, like, I think Drakengard 3 is neat, but I don't think that franchise really actually achieved influential status until Nier Automata. Like, I like Nier a lot. Like, I think Nier's great, but I don't think...
follow Nier like that, but I know that people love Drakengard 3. So I was just like, okay,
people
maybe
do,
like
but
that.
I don't think of it as being influential.
Sure.
Yeah. And if I was going to go that route, I would just say the first Nier in that case.
Man, Definitive is hard, dude.
It's
Definitive is
a weird
hard.
gen for that. It is a weird gen for that genre.
Because here's the thing. I don't want to say.
Because I mean, if you want to look at high profile, right? Like this is when we get Final Fantasy 13, which has the reaction it got, whether you think it's deserved or not.
I love 13.
Yeah,
It's not the
it's not. Yeah,
it's not.
And again, I think it's just because the genre in general wasn't being taken as seriously or was not as successful in the West, and so it's hard for like our standpoint. I would be curious for like someone in Japan, like what like the definitive of that gen would be.
I think I'm backtracking on 13 now.
Now you're gonna say 13 is or what?
Because here's the thing, like
I swear to God, if your answer is because the stagger meter, I'm gonna lose my mind.
No. No. But I do think that 13, and a reason why, like a reason, not the reason, but a reason why I really love 13 is that like at the time, like that was the game that made me be like, wow, this is what a JRPG can be. Like in the sense of like scope and premise and
like visually as well, like just pushing
like
that
visually, like just it just pushed the bar on so much stuff. And I do love the combat system, and I do, like a lot of the criticisms that the game has, I do not have issues with. Like I think it I don't think it is a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that like at that time it pushed the genre forward when it came to like what a JRPG could be.
Sure.
And I also think that outside of that, there's like only two other games that I could really that I personally could think of, one from personal experience, one from just word of mouth, that I think that could be in the conversation. One being Lost Odyssey, but I also don't feel like enough people played it to really say that it was definitive.
I agree.
And then Ni no Kuni.
I mean, I don't know. Ni no Kuni's rough because, like, I know it kind of became like a meme within this podcast that I'll talk shit. I do think Ni no Kuni is a great game, and I don't.
JRPG of all time.
To some, I don't. I don't know. The problem is, at least going with the way I'm defining definitive, I'm not sure what Ni no Kuni inspired after it, other than its own sequel, which didn't even follow in the same footsteps other than art style.
But see, like, I don't need a game to be like, oh, this inspired all like these future games.
Sure, but that's also
to be definitive. I think it's just like it was a time and place thing, and like at that time, I remember like, I don't remember what was like the last big major JRPG on the PS2 that like people were like, oh, like this is the next big JRPG. I don't know if that was Kingdom Hearts 2. I don't know if that was Dragon Quest 8. But I feel like Ni no Kuni was like that it was that kind of conversation. Like this is like the best JRPG in a long time, in years, and I think to this day the game holds up very well. Again, not perfect, but I think it holds up very well. I think it brings a very like the I guess like the sense of like adventure and like its presentation. It's just very like its own thing.
Yeah.
Which and so like I really appreciate that. That I do think Ni no Kuni is in the conversation, and we both agreed that like the PS3 is like definitely the weakest generation for JRPGs since like
the start,
maybe ever.
Yeah,
the start. That like that doesn't mean that it's. I mean, for me, it is a top 25 JRPG, but like that doesn't mean that it has to. Like, if we were to make a definitive top 25 JRPG list, that doesn't mean that like it has to be on that list between the two of us. But we can also recognize like, hey, this is like probably the definitive JRPG
Yeah.
for this era because it was, you know, it met a certain level of quality. It met a certain level, like, unique experience.
Mhm.
You know, the fact that like this, like the studio uh Ghibli collaboration aspect of it all is also really awesome. For me, like, I think that it's got to be either that or Final Fantasy 13.
So, coming at it from a personal standpoint of mine,
Sure.
and I don't think I would ever push this as being the actual answer, and ultimately my actual answer is Dark Souls. But if I am thinking, like, if I'm trying to be stricter about what I consider a JRPG, but this might be a hot take to some folks.
Okay.
I actually think a franchise that was very much at the top of its game during this era uh, was Tales.
Mm.
Symphonia is obviously the one that like got really popularized in the West on the GameCube, but it's during this era that we get like back to back to back. They just were pushing them out, and the quality was still maintaining fairly well. Like we got Grace's F, which was originally on the Wii, but then for us was a PS3 game. Vesperia, which if I'm picking one specific game, that's the one I'm picking. But there is a lot of people who also have a lot of love for Xillia, not as much for Xillia 2. But like, as much as Tales is sometimes relegated, I think, by folks as being sort of a B tier overall franchise, this is when I think it really is like on fire the most generally. Even though I do have a lot of love for Abyss and Symphonia, where I do think like Vesperia is a little bit in the conversation for me.
And see, my main issue with that is it falls under a similar vein as Lost Odyssey for me. Like, yes, more people played Tales because of namesake.
Right.
But I also still feel like it being a 360 exclusive at the time really
in the West, yeah.
In the West really brought it down for it. And I agree with you. I think Vesperia and like Symphonia, like between the two, they're, you know, depending on the day, the best of the series. But yeah, I mean, if it was on both systems, I would definitely say that there's a really good argument for it.
Sure.
But I don't know if I can give that.
I mean,
with
sure, but like during this era, 360 and PS3 are neck and neck, and you're saying Ni no Kuni, and that was PS3 only in the West.
Yeah, but more JRPG players had a PS3.
Honestly, not entirely true with 360. 360 had a ton of unique JRPGs that were not made available here, at least. They were multi-plat in Japan.
About consumers. For consumers.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying though. Like I know a lot of JRPG people who add specifically a 360 because they wanted to play Eternal Sonata. They wanted to play Star Ocean: The Last Hope. They wanted to play Lost Odyssey. Like 360, like it wasn't by choice entirely. It was just that's the only place you could play those games for a while in the West. And some of those got ported eventually at like the very end of the life cycle. But for a time, if you wanted to play those games, you had to have a 360. That's just how it was here.
No, for sure. Yeah, I don't know. Like as someone who just like followed games and like followed like IGN and like read Game Informer during that time, like as like someone who's younger, right? As someone who's like, I guess, not as like locked in.
Sure.
I knew about Final Fantasy 13 and I knew about Ni no Kuni.
Yeah. Which 13 was multi-plat eventually.
Yeah. Yeah, eventually. And that it came out.
No, it was same day. It was same day. That's right.
Yeah, same day multi-plat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like I didn't know about Star Ocean. I didn't know about I knew about Blue Dragon, but I didn't really know it was like a JRPG. I was like, oh, it's like some Japanese game, but I didn't really it didn't really come across to me just from like looking at the box that it was a JRPG. And then I knew about Lost Odyssey a bit, but like I never played it. And so yeah, it's kind of tough for me. Like I feel like this is a generation because everything was so directly on, like, is in the era of exclusives more than any other where that it kind of feels like it depends on what your experience was with those consoles.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm coming from it as someone who did have access to both pretty much from the start. I got a 360 first, but the 360 was also out for like a year before PS3. And I can just say, as someone who was a huge fan of RPGs in the PS2, 360 was where I played RPGs for a while. Again, not because I was like, oh, I like 360 more. It just was literally what I had to use because they didn't release it otherwise in the West. If I wanted to play certain games, if I wanted to play Vesperia or Lost Odyssey or Star Ocean, like, it was a 360 game.
Yeah.
That's what I had to do.
Yeah, for sure. That's tough. I mean,
it's a weird era, and I figured this would be the one we'd talk the longest about, to be honest, like, just because it is such a weird one. Even if you accepted my Dark Souls answer right away, like, there's just that follow-up conversation of like what was going on this gen and what defines it.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me ultimately, I would probably go Final Fantasy 13, just because, again, like, I think that was the game that just like set the bar and like on the kind of spectacle and scope of what JRPGs could be. Where like I feel like JRPGs during that time, they just felt a little bit, they felt smaller scope to like other big, other like genres, and like Final Fantasy 13 like really just blew my mind that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Final I can't believe I've walked that back, but like, yeah, I think Final Fantasy 13 is the pick for me.
Wow.
So
yeah.
Hey,
Yeah, and we didn't talk about it too much, but I don't think I would pick any of these as like the individual, but I just want to shout out, like, I think this is an era where there was a lot of interesting stuff happening in the handheld space, especially PSP. People who were into like dungeon crawlers, like JRPG style dungeon crawlers, like PSP and later on Vita was a goldmine for that particular style. That took off more in Japan than here. There are people who got into that over here, but we just didn't get as many of them ported right away. But that was like a whole subgenre that was beginning to really thrive. More so than previously. And then there's stuff I loved on the DS, but I think nothing that broke to that degree of popularity. Like, I could be like, oh man.
Honestly, I actually changed my mind.
Oh, where are we going?
Finish your thoughts, because it's in the handheld space.
Is it going to be Pokemon again?
It is going to be Pokemon again. It's gonna be Heart Gold and Soul Silver.
We're just running it back. I did have that thought, honestly, when I was first looking at like DS. I was like, what can we talk about for DS? It is
the definitive remake. It is the best remake ever made. And I think that even though I like Crystal more, because I love the aesthetic and I love all those like the pixel art, like all those aspects.
Yeah.
Like, that game was an event. Like, when that game came out, everyone, like, literally, like, everyone at school was like walking around in between classes. They had their DS out. They had their Pokewalker. They were in it. To be clear, I was in a sophomore year of high school when this game came out. And we were just like, oh, what starter did you pick? Oh, blah, 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 blah. Like, and it was like, oh, where are you at now in the game? Blah, 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 blah. Dude, like, there's no other game that came, like, even like Call of Duty. Like, I remember when like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 came out, people were not like talking about that game like they were when Pokemon Heart Gold Soul Silver. Like, it was an event, y'all. and so for me, it has to be Heart Gold Soul Silver.
There's a part of me that just wants to be like, you know what? Yes, we're gonna solidify that, because the 3DS or the DS is where we got to start seeing a lot of 3D remakes of older games, and then we can blame all future remake culture on the success of Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Yeah, I think I still overall stand by my answer to Dark Souls, but I can absolutely see like leaning into Pokemon again with like Heart Gold Soul Silver, especially because like that is, I mean, I agree that's the best Pokemon game, like mainline, like that's like my favorite one of all time. And so the final answer for this generation is absolutely Sonic: The Dark Brotherhood. So moving on to 8th gen.
By BioWare.
Yeah, by BioWare. That was a game that happened. Oh boy, that's its own episode. 8th gen.
All right. Now, I want to I want to hear you go first because there's a particular one, there's a particular game that I'm thinking of that I think is in the conversation. I don't know if you're going to bring.
Do you
So
think?
I want to.
Do you think I'm never going to see it coming? Because the answer is Persona 5.
Okay. Because here's the thing. And so my initial thought was like it's 100% Persona 5 or Final Fantasy 7 remake.
Yeah, I think there's room for argument there, but
there is a game that I think is in the discussion.
What platform?
Well, I mean, it's on everything now.
Now, but at the time,
during that generation, it released on those consoles.
Okay. Other than 5, because like those were the two that came to my head right away. It was 7 remake and Persona 5. And I absolutely lean towards Persona 5 again, coming from the aspect of influence, where I'm just like, look, as much as I love Persona 3 and 4, and they were doing a lot of things first, 5 popularized the calendar mechanic. 5 introduced their very snappy UI, which has now become a thing in a lot of games to try and like jazz up turn-based combat. I just think Persona 5, like, as much as we like to hate on it, I look at the influence that game has and games that clearly point back to it as like something that influenced part of their design. And I'm just like, yeah, like it is that game. As much as I do like Final Fantasy 7 Remake, I'm not sure what other game you're talking about.
Undertale.
Interesting, yes, because this gets back to the defining JRPG, because obviously it owes so much of its influence to Earthbound, as well as other titles. I mean, even Live Alive plays a bit of an influence. Megalovania is directly named after Megalomania. Interesting.
Because I think Undertale at this point is the quintessential indie game. Like,
for a lot of people, it's certainly like
that or Shovel Knight.
I think there's an argument for like Cave Story going further back, but in terms of like long lasting, I mean, like Undertale is that one for sure. I would say even, I mean, I love Shovel Knight, but if we're talking about like establishing its fan base and going on to inspire other games, Shovel Knight is a beautiful reinvention of classic tropes. Undertale is a whole other weird thing that led to like indie subgenres that were trying to capture what it did. Interesting.
I'm completely like
yeah,
okay.
I hadn't. Well, because here's the thing, right? Even though it came out on all those things, in my brain, and this is where it's a PC game, and that gets weird when talking about this kind of stuff because PC is PC.
Yes, but it did like its first console launch was on PS4 and Switch,
and its original release was also during that gen. It was in 2015, so like it's not like it came out while the PS3 was still the main system or something. I hadn't thought about that because my brain codes it as a PC game so much. That is actually a tougher choice. Because I will give it to Persona over Final Fantasy 7 Remake, even though I prefer Remake. That's tough. I might have to agree with you and drop Persona 5. As much as like, and this isn't just me continuing my hate train of Persona 5, dislike train. I like Persona 5 a lot. I think I would have to give it to Undertale though. Yeah, if we're counting it, and some people don't because of where the dev is based, what games influenced it, what the type of style of gameplay is, whatever. As someone who's willing to stretch the definition of JRPG quite a bit, I would include it.
Let's do the same thing as Dark Souls. Is Undertale a JRPG?
Because like I would say Deltarune blurs that line better, where like Deltarune is like, oh, I mean, like you have a party and like it does like the sideways style animation, like it definitely feels more. Whereas the original game has commands, but you are focused on the kind of bullet mashup aspect of it.
Yeah, a lot of people are considering it a JRPG.
Yeah, I mean the Earthbound
Undertale.
influence is pretty strong.
Yeah, I think. Oh man, it's really tough because like
I think those are two very strong choices, but I
for
do lean
completely
towards
different
for very
reasons.
different reasons. For very different reasons. And as much as I thought Persona 5 was a lock-in, now considering Undertale, I think I have to give it to Undertale.
I think I do too. I think I
Yeah.
do because yeah, Persona 5 was like it was great and it had like a lot of really great moments, like not just in the game but outside of the game, right? Like again, like Joker coming to Smash was awesome, but also like just the Sans costume coming to Smash was like people lost their fucking mind.
Yeah.
Um and like Undertale is so big now that Nintendo's like, hey, we want Deltarune on our Nintendo Switch 2 Direct. Like, you know what I
And
mean?
it's a
Like,
timed
it is,
exclusive. Like you can't play it on
yeah,
Xbox or PlayStation yet. It's only
it
on
is
Switch
the,
and PC.
yeah, it is the one indie, like, for sure that I think that, like, topples, like Silk Song or like Hollow Knight
Oh,
for sure. Like,
absolutely. Well, and predates. Like I
despite, you know, yeah, but even so, like, just like how people are like, the wait for Silk Song has been so,
Yeah.
like,
Well,
terrible.
that's also marketing choices and like because Deltarune is the benefit of it has been releasing chapters semi steadily.
Even that's though it's been super slow. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
I mean, it's not as slow as Silk Song.
No, for sure.
It's more than the Silk Song crumbs. Yeah,
Yeah, I just I just
I
think that
agree.
the way that it's even though it's a JRPG, the way it like implements like the Western RPG elements of like, you know, you don't have to kill anybody. You know what I mean? Like you don't
Sure.
have to do
Yeah,
things. Like you
adding
don't.
moral and ethical weight to your in-game actions, and there are some JRPGs that mess with this concept a little bit too, but it is certainly driven home much harder in Undertale. I mean, your whole route is influenced by whether you got away with not killing anyone or killing literally everyone. So,
Yes.
yeah,
Uh and so but yeah, oh man, but Persona 5 though, like
it's
it's
I
it's
will
really tough.
I will absolutely say that I did not expect to have a challenger just with where my brain was at coming into this. I thought we were going to be like very one and done with this gen. Um,
Mhm.
this actually, I think, is the toughest. To be like last gen was tough for different reasons. It was kind of more like just what is even like the outstanding one.
Yeah. This
Here
one is like these are two very outstanding ones, and it's like which one
for very different
would
reasons.
we pick?
Yeah,
And like, we don't have to agree. Like
yeah.
there's ones that we
No,
disagreed on,
for
but like
sure. I
I
just think
think
I do
that
agree that it is Undertale. Like I'm turned around on it now that you brought it up.
yeah, and I'm in like I think Undertale is like an absolute masterpiece. Do I have any real like want or need to replay Undertale? Absolutely not. I'm like that's fine. Like I played the game as God intended, and but I have no like real want or need to go back to that. Persona 5, I could totally see myself going back to replaying. But it's also because like that is like the more kind of JRPG that I like to play.
Which is
And
funny because I'm
so
definitely the reverse.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's just one of those things where I think it's tough because I feel like that Undertale has like what was a big, was like arguably the biggest boon for the indie scene,
Yes.
but like Persona 5 more influenced the JRPG genre.
As we
And so
traditionally observe
as
it,
we
yes.
as yes, as we yeah. And so it's just like how do you how do you decide that? And but like, you know, I think we do see influences of other indie JRPGs, like in Stars in Time very much gives Undertale vibes. That's, you know, that's one that just recently came out. um so it's not that it's not there for Undertale. I just think that it was more of a uh success story in the indie space more than the JRPG space.
Yeah.
While Persona 5 was, yo, this is really put Atlas, who has been like making these JRPGs for so long, on the map, like in a way, like in the mainstream, and then has continued to uh take off with that success with their own games with like Metaphor. But then again, we're also seeing Persona influence in Expedition 33 when it comes to its combat for sure. And the, you know, the flash and flare. It's tough. I think I'm gonna read the prompt one more time, and that's how I'm gonna just make my decision. Cause it's hard. It's hard. I'm gonna read. JRPG of a generations, 2025 we're rapidly. What are the JRPGs that defined a generation? Did Undertale define a generation?
It's tough because also, like, okay, so I feel like we're just gonna have to move on at some point in this one because I think we're just
Well,
gonna keep
this is the
dancing
last
around
one.
it.
Oh no, we have one
No,
more,
we
right?
gotta we gotta talk about current gen, and which current gen is also like we can't give anything definitive because we're in the middle of it. But it's tough because again, while I think a lot of people do classify it as a JRPG, I don't think that's the first knee jerk thought of what it is, right? I think indie, just even though indie isn't really a genre, like that's just where people's brains go.
Sure.
And furthermore, because it was originally on PC first, and that's where it really initially flourished and grew,
Absolutely.
it's hard to think about it in terms of console generations because it did come there, and there's lots of people who finally played it on Switch or Xbox or PlayStation, but it's not quite as strongly associated as like Persona 4 on the PS3 or Persona 5 on the PS3 and PS4, and got re-released as Persona 5 Royal, and eventually made its way to PC. But like, it's Persona. It is a console game in a lot of people's brains. So there's an association game here happening a little bit that I think impacts it. But when I'm thinking of overall generation and influence, I think I got to stick with that Undertale answer. You convinced me, and now you're the one who's trapped.
Well, I was just like, I want to have a discussion about it.
Yeah.
Because I definitely think it's, you know, in the conversation. Yeah, I think these games are both like masterpieces for completely different reasons. Um, I think I have to pick Undertale. I think I have to pick Undertale. Um, I just think that like, yeah, what it did for the indie space is so significant that it affects that generation, and it will just like continue to affect all generations like moving forward. It's so significant.
Yeah.
Okay, and then yeah, this generation.
So yeah, how do you feel on this? Because I think there's like, at least being in the middle of it, I think there's like 3 games people would probably consider in the running right now. But maybe I'm coming at it from a totally different angle than you are.
Hit me with them.
I mean, it's almost a rerun of the things we were saying for last gen, which is telling about our love of franchises. But Rebirth, Metaphor, and Expedition 33.
And I don't think any of them should be in the conversation.
Over
like, personally.
Over what?
I think that once everything's said and done, like I don't think any of them should be in the a conversation. Because I think remake was not just a better game, but it was just like a better executed project. Metaphor was like a good new IP, but I don't think it really brought any new like influence moving forward. And I think Expedition 30 I think there will be like influence from Expedition 33. I just don't think that game is great so far. And so I don't I for me, I just don't see that either.
Sure.
Um so yeah. What I guess like where where's your head at it right with it right now?
So, well, I mean, look, again, we're in the middle of this generation. We're not done yet. There are more games that are going to be coming out. Because of the way the generations get counted, it seems like Switch 2 is going to be lumped in with ninth gen for its life cycle. So who knows how long that's going to be and what can get included in that. But just looking at what has so far been successful, that is like this generation, right? Games that aren't just like immediate ports of things that came out from last gen, games that came out once we were kind of well underway, and have been like successful and well received and potentially influential. I stand by those three as being the ones that I think are at least in the conversation, whether any of them individually is actually deserving of it or not. And the problem is with how I'm defining definitive, we just don't know until like more games actually start to come out and we see what left an impression, right? Like if we begin to see a lot more games do the Final Fantasy Rebirth style combat, we can talk about how like real-time RPGs were shaped by this game. My knee jerk right now, just regardless of the stupidity of the conversation of like reviving turn-based games or finally some good like fucking food memes, I do think the fact those conversations happen at all is a sign of the sort of like public influence of Expedition 33. And I do think that game potentially is going to have some influence on other titles coming out. It did not single-handedly save the genre or anything. That's madness. But I do think, at least right now, as we're in the middle of it, it feels like this game is going to have influence. And 3 years from now, I might be like, nope, never mind. That did nothing. But that's how it feels right now, at least, as we're in it. Because I understand that you are not as hot on it right now. And I don't think finishing it is going to change that much for you. Maybe it'll improve it a little bit, but I don't think it's going to have you like night and day be like, oh, never mind, game of the gen, you know? But I've talked to a lot of people where that is kind of the reaction. I mean, even within our own server, there's a few people who, upon finishing it, were like, this might be my favorite game ever now. And
Yeah,
that's a little bit of the, you know, that's also like feeling it in the middle of the fresh hype. Like there's been a few games where I finish it and go, this is the best thing ever. And then a week later I cool off and go, it was great. It was good. But I've had time to cool off with Expedition 33 and I still feel pretty in awe of it overall in terms of like things I liked it doing and I think are going to influence some other things ahead. But yeah, that's how I'm feeling in the moment. I'm curious to re-examine that particular question once we're playing on PS6 and Xbox PC.
Xbox PC. Yeah, I mean, like, I would say unbiasedly, I think that Expedition 33 has the most potential for sure. Because Rebirth is just a sequel to remake, and then Metaphor like didn't change the landscape of like what you expect from a major Atlas RPG.
Mm-hmm.
So I would probably like agree with you. I just that game's fine. Expedition 33 is fine.
I really need you to finish it so we can do a spoiler cast. Like
I know, but I gotta play Legend of Dragoon.
And the thing is, like, look, I understand it more so than a lot of other like big games of being divisive. But that's also why I want to talk more about it because, like, I don't know, talking about divisive games is more fun than like, yeah, this is great. I love this. Don't you love this? That's great. Especially because
I feel like
especially because I know we're coming out of it that way. Like we're both like we're so opposite on it. Like we've agreed on like the Persona 5, like, yeah, it's great, but we also hate on it a little bit. We have some differences in like Xenoblade. I think Final Fantasy, we have specific taste stuff, but like ultimately there's a lot of like, you know, common reoccurrences. I feel like this is the first big release where you and I are very opposite ends. And so yeah, I need you to finish it.
no, but I gotta play Legend of Dragoon, and so That's like the main thing. But
Yeah.
I do need to finish it. I do need to finish it. It's just it's tough right now.
I get it.
But I agree with you. You know, I'm like, yeah, if out of those three, it probably is Expedition 33. I just there's just things about that game I just very much don't really care for, and I'm worried about the influence that that game is going to bring to people.
I will say, I absolutely think it is going to be one of those games where we're going to see some games take the entirely wrong message from it. But like, that's it. You know, it's what happened with Souls likes and Dark Souls, where everyone made new Souls likes, and I'm like, you didn't get what was actually cool about that game, but okay, like, that's cool that we have this like drowning in this genre now.
Every turn-based RPG is going to have a parrying system now, and
and that I do not like. That is, like, honestly, like, my walking away from Expedition 33 is not that parries are good in RPGs. Like, that is not. This seems to be like the popular shorthand for people that are just seeing other people talk about it, and that's not. Like, I think the parry is honestly one of the least interesting things about that game.
And those are the things that are getting people that don't like turn-based combat to play it, and it makes me so mad. It makes me so mad.
I think that's an oversimplification. I think there is more going on for why people are liking it, but the parry is a very easy shorthand to point to of like, oh, that's a weird new thing. And again, if that ends up being the main lesson people take from it, I won't be surprised, but I will be upset.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see. I know I need to finish Expedition 33. I don't know when that's going to be. But because we need to play Legend of Dragoon, and I think I probably have like 40 hours of that game left.
It is not a short game. This is true.
No. And then we have thankfully, you know, we got our next Campfire Catalog game figured out, and it's not remotely as long. So we should be able to catch up after we get done with that. But yeah, so that's solid. We'll run down the lists again really quick. So third gen, you picked Dragon Quest, I picked Dragon Quest 3. Fourth gen,
Pokemon.
Fifth gen, Final Fantasy 7. Sixth gen, Kingdom Hearts 2. Seventh gen, I said Final Fantasy 13. You said
Dark Souls.
What did you say?
Dark Souls.
Well, yeah. If we're including Dark Souls, if we're including Dark Souls, it's Dark Souls.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not like, there's no discussion there. But if not, which I feel that way, Final Fantasy 13. And then 8th gen, Undertale. And then 9th gen, Expedition 33, I guess.
Yeah. Honorable mention to Persona 5 for last gen, but if we're picking one, I think we came to Undertale. Yeah.
Yeah, because that was the thing I was wanting to potentially bring up when we got to the 360 PS3 gen. I was like, Persona 5's technically a PS3 game.
Yeah, but it doesn't define that generation. It came out during the PS4. No. It was just cross-gen.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, if it came out like the last year of the PS3 and then immediately got ported to PS4, that'd be something. But like, that's like saying that like Breath of the Wild is like, you know, the best Wii U game of all time. It's like, I mean, you're not wrong, but like, it's a Switch game. Like, that's.
I was actually surprised that you didn't bring up Nier Automata.
Look, I had thought about it, but it's just, especially within, if Nier Automata was a PS3 game, I would have picked that, like, no problem. But
not Nier Replicant or normal Nier.
I like normal Nier, but have you played the original one that wasn't remade? It was rough, and it did not like. It has its fan base. Like, don't get me wrong, there are people who played that back then and liked it. But Nier Automata is absolutely the game that blew up that franchise worldwide. For various reasons, and that wasn't until PS4. And like, I do think it's worth bringing up, like, briefly in that sense. But if I'm talking about longer term, like, bigger impact, I think Undertale and Persona 5 take it over it.
Oh yeah, I agree with you. I'm just surprised that you didn't bring it up.
Yeah,
I would have shot it down immediately. To be clear, I would have been like, no, sorry. But yeah. Cool. We did it.
We did it. Antique Arcade, thank you very much for the topic.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's our episode for this week. Thank you to everyone listening. You can follow me at Cam Final Mix. You can follow Kevin at Kevin Kenson. Kevin, is there anything that you'd like to say before we dip out?
Dark Souls is a JRPG.
No, it's not. Thank you everybody for listening, and we'll talk to you later.
Later.